So Dr. Young, to start off, why don't we have you give us an overall assessment, kind of a state of the schools?
The schools are in a time of tremendous transformation, and we're very excited about the prospects going forward. We have about 6,400 students in the Cambridge Public Schools today. We happen to be right across the street from the Cambridge Regional Latin School, where about 1,600 or 1,700 of those students are currently being educated. And all the other kids are coming up through, starting obviously with our elementary schools, sometimes as 4-year-olds, sometimes as 5-year-olds, depending on when they begin, and moving on through the grade 5 in the elementary school, and then starting just, we're actually in our second year right now of the upper schools, which are grades 6, 7, and 8. Prior to last September, Cambridge never had upper schools. We had only K through 8 schools, and this transformation of the entire school district to put a greater emphasis on grades 6, 7, and 8 by the creation of these upper schools has really transformed our whole school system.
You certainly have one of the most important jobs in the city. You are tasked with educating the children. Talk to us about some of the priorities that you have and the school committee will have.
Well, the big values that drive us in our schools are academic excellence and social justice. So we want to be sure that, that by academic excellence, what we mean is that all students are educated to really high standards. We know that in order for children to succeed in the 21st century, they need to have what we call 21st century skills in addition to the basics of education. Certainly everyone needs to know how to read and write and do math and all of the rest of that. That still is true. But in addition to that, we need to be able to educate critical thinkers and creative thinkers and effective communicators and people who know how to collaborate and work together. Those are the skills that really are required for people who are employers in the workplace. That's what they're looking for. And our job is to be sure by academic excellence that we broaden our understanding of that term, not just to doing well on the test, although that's important, right? You still need to pass. Not just that, but really to expand beyond that and make sure that children, by the time they graduate from CRLS, have that entire set of skills. And then on the social justice side of things, you know, Cambridge is a place where 55% of our students are what we call full pay lunch, and 45% of our students are on the free and reduced lunch. And so there's a big socioeconomic divide in this community. There just is, and there's nothing wrong in calling it out because it's true and it's real. And we want to be sure that children, despite their socioeconomic status, despite their background, doesn't matter what language they speak as a first language. It shouldn't matter what their race or background or any other of those demographic factors is. Social justice means that all children, no matter where they live in this city, no matter what school they attend, are going to have equity, an equal chance to access the excellence that exists at Cambridge Regional Latin and be prepared for the world beyond.
Academic excellence and social justice, that's an interesting mix of philosophies. How'd you come up with those?
It's a mix, and in some people's minds, it's in conflict, right? Sometimes people will say, how are you really going to challenge these kids if you're worried about those kids, right? And what we're saying is that you really can't, as a school or a school district, say you stand for academic excellence unless you have academic excellence for all. And on the other hand, we're saying you can't really say you believe in social justice if that's not built on a foundation of academic excellence. So they must be married.
One of the hot button issues nationally is around teacher evaluations. How are you going to address that issue?
Yeah, you're right, Calvin. It is a hot button issue. It's a really complicated issue because if you just step back from it for a second and say, okay, who was the best teacher you think you, I'm not going to ask you to answer it, but who was the best, who were some great teachers that you had when you were a child? And probably you can remember them. Now, you then ask yourself, well, what exactly made them good? And what made this one good and what made that one good may be very different things, right? Or what makes the good teacher for you and the good teacher for me may be different things, right? So it's not quite as simple as it is to say, well, they got the highest test scores, or they got the most kids into college, or they did this or they did that. It's very difficult to reduce it to those kind of single or even double statistical measures, right? So what is important is that we have a system, and this is what the educator evaluation system is about, that is developed in such a way that really takes into mind multiple variables that go into good teaching. Now, this is not a Cambridge initiative, I need to tell you. This is something that's coming to us from the federal government, frankly, from Race to the Top and President Obama and Secretary Duncan. It filters on down through the state of Massachusetts and the State Board of Education. And every school district in Massachusetts is now asked to create, in line with these federal standards, educator evaluation systems. The way that we're doing that here is with our teachers, right? So this is not something we're trying to do to the teachers, but we're trying to do it with the teachers. Now, that change of preposition from to with may seem small, but it turns out to be big, because we want to be working with them in this collaborative way, modeling those 21st century skills I was just talking about around working together and being creative and collaborative, and also thinking critically, right? To create a system that gives teachers good, accurate feedback on how they're doing with the kids so that they can improve their practice going forward. And at the same time gives us tools to say, you know what, if Young is not cutting it as a teacher, and we've seen it for a few years running, and we have to make a personnel decision about him, we need some good data to be able to document that.
So given what you said, there's a certain consistency between what you're thinking about with the teachers and the families and the students?
That's the idea. That's part of the culture that we're trying to build here. And it's a challenge, right? But the culture that we're trying to build here is around collaboration, working together, and rising up in the name of the children is all ultimately about the students. I mean, let's face it, if there were no kids in Cambridge, I wouldn't have a job. None of the teachers would have a job. The only reason any of us is here is that there happen to be 6,400 kids who live here. That's why we're here, and that's the mission that we need to keep in mind. Now, we have terrific teachers in Cambridge. They work really hard at what they do, and it's our job, it's my responsibility and the responsibility of the staff to say, how can we support you? How can we help you grow and develop and nurture you as professionals? At the same time that we're saying, how can we be clear about the standards by which we're going to make assessments and evaluations, because that's also part of our job.
So again, even when we're talking about your family engagement and your community engagement, and again, there's that same thread of consistency running through your philosophy.
That's what we're trying to do. That's what we believe in, and that's what we keep on working on through every different stakeholder group or interest group or just group, right, that is involved in the schools. I think it's the right way to proceed. Family engagement is critical, right? So we know that when school staff and families work together, collaborate, right, they're in it together, those kids are going to soar. They're going to take off, right? When the communication and the collaboration between school and home is ineffective, the kids are going to pay a price. That's not right. That's not their fault. The adults have to figure out, how are we going to get past our differences? How are we going to get past our biases? How are we going to get past our insecurities or anxieties about working with each other to do something together in the name of the children? And the challenge around that is engaging particularly those families who have been historically or traditionally disengaged from the schools. We have lots of very, very active parents, and we're fortunate to have very active parents in Cambridge who have all kinds of ideas and are very involved in their kids' education. And then there are other families who, for a variety, no fault of their own, by the way, but for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're working several jobs. Maybe they just don't have the time. Maybe they don't speak English well enough and feel, insecure about it. Maybe they don't know what the opportunities are for them. Maybe culturally they're told, stay away from the schools, just have reverence for the staff, and it's not your place. Whatever reason, right? Those families don't love their children any less than the families of means. I can assure you of that, right? Our challenge is, how can we really engage all the families to help all the kids?
So, Dr. Young, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but certainly you can't rule by decree. But so tell me, how easy or hard has it been to kind of change the culture internally with the teachers, given what you were just talking about?
One way to think about that, one way to answer that question is to change the paradigm slightly so that we're not talking about change as much as evolution, or maybe even better than evolution, education, right? So just as the education of the children is a journey, and the public schools takes 13 years, right, by the time they start kindergarten until the 12th grade. Just as that's a journey, so too is this journey for us as adults, right? Change that is expected to happen in one day or 1 year, I can assure you of this, will be cosmetic change. That's not what anybody wants. At least that's not what I want. What I'm interested in is building our capacity of our staff and our students and our community to deal with a world that's always changing, right? You can't ever get it to the point where you can say, the schools are now perfect, don't touch them, right? Because as soon as you say that, something else has happened out there in the world and something has to be changed to address that, to respond to that. So rather than trying to get some moment of perfection, which is elusive and frankly doesn't even exist, right? Better to build our capacity to deal with the many challenges that come to us, to build our agility and flexibility in incorporating new ideas, to have the adults, which goes from me to a principal, to a teacher, to a parent, to a custodian, to a bus driver, to a food service worker, to a clerk, anyone who works is part of the school community, to have the adults model that behavior that we want in students, which is to be open, to learn, to try things, to be willing to fail, to test out new ideas, to experiment, to learn from our mistakes and move ahead.